All right, good evening. I'm so glad you could join us for what's going to be a wonderful tour of interesting and important religious institutions throughout the state. This is another program in our month-long Sacred Sites Open House celebration. I'm Peg Breen. I'm president of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. Our Sacred Sites program offers grants and technical help to maintain and restore religious buildings of all denominations. We started open house tours 11 years ago, inviting people to visit religious institutions in their communities to learn about their history and architecture, as well as the cultural and social service programs they provide. You don't have to be religious at all to understand how lovely and important these buildings are and how they anchor their neighborhoods. Thanks to COVID, this is our second virtual celebration. The advantage is that we can celebrate longer. We've got a whole month. And we offer tours that allow you to see many more sites at one time than you could visit in person. Tonight, we're traveling from Long Island to Buffalo to visit 11 diverse institutions and meet representatives from many of them. We're beginning on Long Island. The Bethel AME Church in Huntington is the oldest African-American church on Long Island, and also one of the only two active North Shore African Methodist Episcopal churches still holding services. The church purchased the property on which it's located in 1844. The current AME building was constructed in 1925. The present structure is a wood frame vernacular building with colonial revival and Gothic details. Some of the founders of the church and their families are buried in a small cemetery in the rear. In 2017, the church began a restoration project of its stained glass windows. The campaign was partially funded by the Conservancy, along with the Robert David Lyon Gardner Foundation and Gary Foundation. The stained glass windows date back a century. They're excellent examples of Art Nouveau influenced design from that era. A century of wear and tear had left many of them in perilous condition. The newly restored stained glass windows also include memorials to past congregants. The church has about 170 members. It hosts NAACP meetings and other community events. The church was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1985 and is a key site within the African-American cultural heritage of Long Island. We had hoped that Reverend Larry Jennings from the church would be with us. I'm not sure he has made it. Are you here, Reverend Jennings? No. Okay. We're sorry. If he joins us later, we will bring him in. So let's continue. Congregation to Bereth Israel is located in Greenport, Long Island, and dates to 1903. It is the only synagogue in Greenport. The vernacular style building has a front gabled roof and a one-story projecting entrance. There are round arched windows. A community wing addition dates from 2000. The synagogue was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2006. The bema is located on the west side of the interior. The congregation's 3 Torahs are located in a wood cabinet dating from the synagogue's construction. The congregation's Metal Yazvit memorial plaques are found on the side wall, and they can be lit as a memorial. The synagogue hosts concerts, Hebrew classes, and lunch and learn events. In 1968, the congregation purchased the adjoining property and created a memorial park. We're pleased to have the president of the congregation with us, Judith Weiner. Judith, are you here? Okay, maybe she isn't either. Sorry, we'll see if she can join us as we go along, because we were hoping that each of the people would offer some interesting tidbits they wanted us to know.
Peg, there is a Judy on the call, and I wonder if that is Judith Sinclair, and if she could unmute herself to confirm that.
No, it's not me. I'm a different Judy.
Okay. Nice to have you anyway, different Judy. That's all right. Okay. So all of you other representatives get longer to talk. Look at it that way. So we're moving on. And we know that this representative couldn't be with us either. But Scahary, Taxiarchus, and Gerasimos Greek Orthodox Church is located in the North Fork town of Greenport, the formerly Protestant church, and it was purchased in 1981. The church is adorned with polychromatic frescoes and iconography. Murals within the church are Neo-Byzantine in composition. The church hosts an annual blessing of the waters ceremony with a procession to the waterfront. It kicks off Greenpoint's Maritime Festival. Part of the ceremony includes throwing a cross into the water and have swimmers dive in to retrieve it. The church is a vital center for the Greek community on Long Island. Numerous events and festivals are hosted within the church throughout the year. And again, we're sorry that Father Ballas was unable to attend due to a family commitment in Greece. But we thought it was such an interesting church that you'd like to see it anyway. But now we'll head up to the Hudson Valley. The Peakskill Presbyterian Church was built in 1846 in the Greek Revival style. The entrance is fronted by a pedimented gable roof and Doric pilasters. Each side elevation has 4 unusual 36/36 double hung sash windows. Absolutely beautiful. A prominent bell tower above the entrance is detailed with elaborate classical ornamentation, such as the Corinthian columns. Much of the interior was modified in 1892, and most of the furnishings are from this date. A late 19th century addition provided room for the organ loft, as well as the choir loft. Peakskill Presbyterian plays an active role in supporting the surrounding community. They maintain a food bank and help found an affordable housing complex nearby. The congregation hosts an annual community Christmas dinner. We're pleased to have Daniel Harrison from the church with us. Mr. Harrison? We're not having good luck getting the representatives tonight. So we'll continue on.
I'm here. Daniel is here.
Oh, great.
I had unmuted myself, then it muted me again. So modern
okay.
technology.
Yeah. All right. Well, in briefly, if you will, tell us a thing you'd like us to know about the church and your community. And could you, we can only see half your face for some reason.
Okay. Can you
There
see
we
me
are.
now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I moved over.
Okay.
All right. The first thing I would like to mention is there's history before the 1846 period. We got land from a Quaker in 1799, Nathaniel Brown, on which a church was built. And at that time, there was a bell tower installed. And that's the bell tower that has the bell that's in the tower church today. And it that dates back to 1799. As it was on the historic register, dating 1826. And then in 1846, a new structure was built. The older one was dismantled, and a 40 by 60 building was built at that time, which is basically a sanctuary where you saw the paneled windows, 36 square paneled windows. The bell tower is 8-sided. The towers have significance. The 8 sides suggest the 8th day in the book of Mark. So the organ, there was some information about the organ, but that was put in later. The pipes that you saw on the picture now are decorative, but they may have been functional at one time. And so there are some important historical connections I just wanted to mention in the church. There was a Captain Isaac, what's his name?
We're losing your face again, too.
Oh, okay. Just excuse me for just a second.
Okay, because we're gonna have to
It
move
was,
on in a moment.
okay, well, anyhow, there was a member, the person buried in our graveyard was involved in a very important transfer of munitions for the Battle of Saratoga, which was hugely important in the American Revolution.
Yep.
And there are some other historical figures like Chauncey Depew, who was nominated for president of the United States, served as a senator for the state of New York, 2 terms. There are other things besides the Christmas dinner that we're involved in. For example, working with, we got a grant from Presbyterian, and we had a special youth program for inner city youth in Peakskill, in which we were able to call God's Disciples, which we were able to develop relationships among the students there, not only to do modern dance, but also to do work in their academics, since many of them went on to go to college. We have a long history of mission work, which you mentioned. It's local, national, international. We had a strong, right now we contribute nationally when they distribute the funds, but we still do local stuff, and we assist in disaster relief, and we send work groups. We've gone to Puerto Rico, Maine, Peakskill itself to do work, and Appalachia.
Huh.
So just a few things that we've been involved in doing church.
That's terrific, and we have to keep going because we have a few more sites.
Okay, okay, thank you for
So
the
we
opportunity.
hope to have some questions at the end.
Okay,
If you
that's
want to
fine.
put them in chat, and we may be back to you, but thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to continue on right now. So we're going further north to Scahary. The Skahere Reformed Church, just west of Albany, dates back to the 1720s. The church was designed in a Greek revival style by a local builder, G.J. Perry, in 1844. The entrance is lined with fluted Doric columns. Both side elevations are adorned with multiple stained glass windows, likely installed about 1896. The design of the church's logo, a dove bursting forth from the heavens, is drawn from one of the stained glass windows. The windows were severely damaged by Hurricane Irene in 2011. They've suffered further from years of wear and tear. The church is currently conducting a capital campaign to pay for their repair and recently received a conservancy grant. The sanctuary is arranged with auditorium-style seating. Scahary Reformed conducts a wide range of social outreach, including operation of fairs and a food pantry. Additionally, they operate an overnight church summer camp. We're pleased to have an elder from the church, Cynthia Parks. Ms. Parks?
Hi, good afternoon. I also have the head of buildings and grounds with me on a separate computer, Dave Tolbert, and he can speak more about the church than I can.
And can I just ask one of you to mute yourselves? There's a
Yes.
lot of feedback when you're not talking. Thanks.
Yes, I will.
And let's see.
Which was,
Yeah, I see some other people who aren't muted too. Mr. Harrison, would you mind muting yourself? All right, thank you. Okay.
okay, nuts. Yeah, we are, well, we're sitting next to each other about a few feet away, and this isn't working. Hang on a second while Cindy turns her speaker off.
That's right, you sound okay now. Mr.
Cindy has muted herself,
Yeah,
so you're
okay.
good.
Yeah, is that, okay. All right, we're doing a little better. Yes, Dave Tolborg, Scahary Reformed Church. Just a shout out to the Peakskill. Yeah, I could see a lot of similarities to that. Just a little background, you know, the Scahary Reformed Church is doing its 300th anniversary this year. The valley was first settled in 1712, and the Reformed Church, the Dutch Reformed Church, formed in 1721. So we are doing our 300th anniversary birthday celebrations this year, which also includes some fundraising. Just a little plug for those of you that are into history. The old stone fort in Scahary, if you've ever heard of that, that's a museum maintained by the county. The old stone fort was the Reformed Church. We built it in 1772, and it became fortified during the Revolution, and withstood two serious skirmishes during the Revolutionary War. Since then, getting to our windows, I would like to say that we've known they needed help for some time, and they were just moving to the top of our list when Hurricane Irene hit in August of 2011, and all of the subsequent demolition and structural repairs and other things resulting from that set back the windows until now. We began seriously fundraising for that 2 years ago, and then the COVID thing hit us, which set us back yet again. So, but with all of that said, the exciting thing is we're halfway there in our fundraising project right now. So we are looking forward to moving forward with having our windows repaired next year, 2022. Questions, comments, thoughts?
We're gonna come back to questions and comments, after we see all the other sites. But thank you. That's terrific. That's a wonderful history. Skahere is a beautiful community, and I'm sorry there was such an impact from Irene. And good for you for coming back from that. So thank you, and we'll be back to you at the end. Right now, we're going to go on to Rockland.
Peg, you're muted. And someone else has got their TV playing.
Yeah, I didn't mute myself, so I'm not quite sure how that happened, but anyway, and everybody else is muted. So I'm starting over. The Church of St. John of the Wilderness in Rockland County was designed by Manhattan architect Ralph Townsend in 1880. The Gothic Revival Church was constructed of local fieldstone. It was funded by a grieving widow in memory of her husband, who died on their honeymoon. The surrounding area was leveled in 1942 through eminent domain to make way for Harriman State Park. St. John's avoided the wrecking ball thanks to its cemetery. The interior contains exposed wood trusses, typical of the small-scale Gothic Revival country churches. It's illuminated by stained glass lancet windows. The church's history is recorded on many of the windows. Few changes have taken place in this country church over the years. What a history. So we're pleased to welcome Casey Sikorsky, the clerk of the church. I hope. Casey? No, maybe not.
Yeah, we had an incorrect email address. I don't believe this site person made it on.
Okay, sorry. Once again. But you're seeing the beautiful buildings. And we know we're all set for this next site, one of my very favorites, not that you're all wonderful, but I used to live in Albany. And this is the Cathedral of All Saints, the mother church of the 19-county Episcopal Diocese of Albany. The design dates back to an 1882 competition. Architect Robert W. Gibson was awarded the project, resulting in the cathedral's Gothic Revival design. Construction began in 1884. There we are. Oh, that was quick. Let's see construction for a second. Can we go back one? There we are. There they are. Okay. And then Cathedral Grounds were originally included a hospital, school, and other works. Huge complex. It is now surrounded on nearly all sides by state government. The cathedral was never fully completed, though usable, due to a lack of funds. A simplified stone facade was installed on the west entrance in 1971. It's a departure from Gibson's plan. The rose window above the west entrance depicts the saints in glory. It was designed by John Lafarge. The large east window is one of the defining features of the completed chancel and one of the largest single works of leaded stained glass in the country. The panels were designed by the London firm Clayton and Bell. The apse is centered by an intricately carved stone high altar designed by Louis Hinton. Across the transepts, the cathedral is 130 feet wide, and the nave spans 44 feet between the centers of the columns. The structure is composed of load-bearing masonry and brick. The ornately carved wood clergy and choir stalls date from the 17th century. They were acquired from a long-demolished church in Bruges, Belgium. The cathedral normally seats 1,000, but can accommodate over twice that for special events such as concerts and tours. We're pleased to welcome the Dean of the Cathedral, Dr. Leandro Harding. Dr. Harding?
Yes, I'm here.
Right.
I'll just say a couple of things. We're coming up on our 150th anniversary as a cathedral. 2 years before we get to our 150th anniversary, our choir of men and boys will get to their 150th anniversary because Bishop Doane, who was the first bishop of Albany in the Episcopal Church and who had the vision for the cathedral, wanted from the very first to have sung services. And so he started the choir before he got the cathedral going. So the choir of men and boys has been in continuous service for almost 150 years, and they're only one of about a half a dozen of these choirs left in North America. The cathedral is called the Pioneer Cathedral. There were a couple of other churches that were cathedrals in the Episcopal Church before us, but ours was the first one that was built on the scale and in the size of the great European and English cathedrals. It is thought that the Cathedral of All Saints is the 5th largest true Gothic church in North America. For instance, it's only 8 feet more from the doors to the high altar at St. Patrick's than it is at the Cathedral of All Saints. It's truly one of the great treasures of this area, and it's an incredible privilege to be the dean here.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us, and we'll continue on and see you towards the end. We're now going to Troy, the congregation Bereth Shalom, within the Central Troy Historic District, one of the largest historic districts in the country. It was built in 1870, designed by Troy architect Marcus Cummings. It incorporates Italianate and Romanesque forms, such as the ornament at the cornice and a steeply pitched front gable. Bereth Shalom is credited as New York State's oldest synagogue in continuous use. Here it is in the early 20th century. The stained glass windows date from 1962, and the formerly stenciled interior walls were painted white at that time. The Yarzit Memorial on the wall is located towards the entrance of the synagogue. The elaborately carved ark was donated in memory of a young man who died in a boating accident on the Hudson River. His initials are there on the carving. The Ner Tamid, or eternal flame, is still gas-fired. The temple was restored and reconcentrated in 1962. We're pleased to welcome Kirk Davidoff from the congregation. Mr. Davidoff?
Hi, that's Dan. Kirk Davidoff,
Yes.
Hyphenated last name there. No problem at all.
I
Hi.
see. Yeah,
This
Kirk
is,
Davidoff.
yeah,
Got
no,
it.
sorry, really not relevant. Yeah, what I love, one of the quirks of this sanctuary, you can see it right to the kind of in the rear of that picture. Is there's a spiral staircase that goes down from the sanctuary down to the social hall. And I don't know if that was built for a sense of drama, so someone could rise dramatically out of there, carrying who knows what, because they wouldn't be carrying the Torah up and down there. But or maybe it was just a quick exit for the kids at some point in the service. But it's a nice detail. We've just, as you can see, there's bare wood floor surrounding that bima there, and that just got put in. We're very happy that we've moved from kind of some ugly and asbestos-laden flooring to a new floor that should last a few centuries. And we're also happy to be putting some solar panels on the school next door. Reb Deb, our rabbi, just piped up to mention that this staircase was actually put in per fire code to make sure there were 2 exits from the sanctuary. Okay, well, that's less dramatic than I'd hoped, but it's a good thing it's there. The stained glass you can see was put in during the renovation. Those are somewhat modern style, contrasted with the 1870s style of the rest of the place. And if Margaret or Beth or Reb Deb would like to add anything, I'll cut off there, except to say that we're a really friendly bunch of people and happy to have visitors and look forward to seeing folks there.
Great, thank you so much. And I hope we all can visit you in person on a real open house tour. We're going to stay in Troy. St. Paul's Episcopal Church is located in the Central Troy Historic District, and its exterior design follows Gothic revival precepts, such as the lancet windows and masonry tracery. It was dedicated in 1828 and designed by noted architect Ithiel Town. The church features an interior completely designed by Louis Comfort Tiffany. It is stunning. The interior trusses are augmented by a web of decorative Gothic fretwork and wooden panels, which are washed in a glaze of gold-toned aluminum leaf. The walls above the altar are painted a deep blue, and the mosaics behind it depict different saints. J.A. Holzer of the Tiffany Glass Company led the design of the interior details, such as these wonderful chandeliers. The colors and different patterns of the opalescent glass are a high watermark of Tiffany's career. Here is one of the many stained glass windows found throughout the church. The church finished a comprehensive renovation of its roof in 2016. It was leaking and threatened to damage that incredible interior. The asphalt shingles were replaced with copper sheathing. The Landmarks Conservancy provided both guidance and financial assistance. The church is a landmark in Troy and the state. It's also on the National Register of Historic Places. We're pleased to welcome Reverend Alicia Todaro, the deacon. Reverend Todaro.
Hello, yes, here I am. I'm actually in the church, so if anybody wants to see anything, I might be able to do that. It's an interesting place to work at, and the church is pretty much as Tiffany intended it. We've made very few changes in the 100 or so years, 110, 20 years since it was done. We know that we have a treasure here, and we're very, very careful about it. I had to laugh a bit when you said the roof leaked. It was just delightful to come in here tonight after we've had a couple inches of rain from the hurricane and find it totally dry, because for many years we were a many bucket church. We do get a lot of visitors. We're always happy to have people come in. It is a phenomenal place to just look and see, and an absolutely marvelous place to be clergy.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hope to see you again on one of my other trips upstate.
I'd love to have it. Come again.
Thank you, thank you. Well, now we're all the way over to Buffalo and University Presbyterian Church, which is located on a triangular lot just across from the original University at Buffalo campus. It has an unusual trapezoidal plan. The later education wing is off to the east. The church was built in 1928 in the colonial revival style, designed by prolific Buffalo architects North and Shelgren. The firm designed over 50 churches between 1919 and 1952. The layout is inspired by the ecclesiastical designs of 17th century British architect Christopher Wren. Wren's influence is also found at the Doric style portico and belfry steeple. The interior design is marked by simplicity. Doric columns rise on either side and daylight pours in through clear glass. The education wing was built in 1956 and is also fronted by red brick. The church replaced a much smaller building. Here it is in 1921. University Presbyterian takes an active social role in the community. It maintains a food bank, and it hosts events such as the Scottish Festival, pictured here. We're pleased to welcome an elder from the church, Leanne Grace. Leanne?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. We are celebrating our centennial year. The church was founded 100 years ago as a mission church to the University of Buffalo, and we continue to focus on ministry with university students. The sanctuary has fabulous acoustics and for music particularly. And we have hosted opera recitals and auditions, as well as American Guild of Organists events. Our organ, our keg organ, will celebrate its 20th anniversary this year. The candles behind me reflect our first Friday's Taizé services, which are quite ecumenical. They're half an hour with lots of candles, lots of singing and meditation. And the other thing I would mention in terms of our work with the community is that our education building has been shared for many years with a counseling center for children and teenagers. And that center has taken over about 2/3 of the education wing at this point.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to go to our last church, which is also in Buffalo, Blessed Trinity Roman Catholic. It's located in northeastern Buffalo, and it dates back, or the present church dates back to 1928. The church was designed by Buffalo architects Chester Oakley and Albert Shalom. They're in the Lombard Romanesque style, favored by Oakley in his many Catholic church designs. Construction began in 1923, and you can see the steel trusses in the background here. Here's a bricklayer, Mr. Gajewski, about 1926, standing at the base of the window where his picture is held. The facade is composed of Harvard bricks, known for their irregular shape and consistency. The walls are 2 feet thick, and the bricks are often crossed and laid lengthwise into the wall, with the ends or headers exposed. The main portico is an extraordinary array of detailed terracotta symbolism. The interior of Blessed Trinity is also richly detailed with terracotta iconography. The dome is reminiscent of Lombard churches. Buffalo artist Joseph Mazur painted it with 118 full-length figures. It's the centerpiece of the church, which has a dramatic barrel vaulted interior. Rustic tile flooring completes the interior. The church is home to a Teller's Kent pipe organ. Blessed Trinity Roman Catholic is a longtime participant in our Sacred Sites Open House program. And here's a picture from an earlier in-person tour. The congregation resumed social events in May of this year with an outdoor gathering, followed by Trinity Sunday services. There was a successful drive-through barbecue in June of 21. We're pleased to have Margaret Dick, Chair of the Building Heritage Committee. Margaret?
Hello, thank you. I'm just so impressed looking at and being a history major. Hats off to those people in Scahary celebrating their 300th anniversary. That is just amazing. And I feel for the folks who are trying to replace those windows. And for Daniel at the synagogue, now he knows about the stairway, and it's like every time you do a tour, don't you learn something new about your church because of a question that somebody asked? It's some of the, and this picture you're looking at now, you can see where there's plaster that has fallen there in the upper left. And I am very happy to say that we were able to have some plastering and repainting repair work done during the pandemic. And so that is now pristine the way it should be. And the area where the church was built, it's not the first church for the parish. The parish was founded in 1906. This is the second church that was built between 1923 and 1928. But the area of the city was home to stone quarries, and it's very, although the soil is good for growing flowers, it wasn't good for the farmers who were first settled there. They were German farmers. They had a name for it, a German name for the area, Jammerthal, which means Valley of Tears. But the original church building, which was just adjacent to this one, they didn't pour a foundation. They dug an opening in the stone and built the church over the opening that they had tunneled through in the rock. The stained glass windows in the church are not original. Somebody asked about who else made stained glass. These were made in the early 1950s by a company in Buffalo, FROHE. It's no longer in business, unfortunately. The original rose windows and this skylight that you're looking at were rolled amber cathedral glass because the church is meant to be a replication of 12th century Lombard Romanesque architecture, and they would not have had stained glass windows. But the fifth pastor, Father Crane, who was the pastor when I was a small child, he had been to Europe, fell in love with stained glass, came back, had to have these stained glass windows, and they are beautiful. This one, the theme of it is Christ the King. The other three, which are rose windows, are with symbols from the mysteries of the Rosary. And this particular one is, of course, the most expensive. And it has, well, now I lost my place with the window. But it is a beauty, but the windows unfortunately make the church darker. So that is the downside of having stained glass replace roll amber cathedral glass.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It looks like a absolutely beautiful church.
It is.
We've seen a lot of absolutely wonderful religious institutions today, and we have a few more questions. And I noticed that Dean Leander also can tell us someone else who makes stained glass windows, or where the cathedral got theirs. Dean?
You know, most of the windows, and one of the things unusual about the cathedral is that a lot of churches, you get a window from this artist and another window from that artist, and it kind of grows over time. But Bishop Doane had a vision for the entire suite of windows when the cathedral was built. There's only a very few modern windows, and almost everything is from Bell and Company in London, England, very famous stained glass maker in London. And almost all of Bell's windows were destroyed during World War II. So the Cathedral of All Saints happens to be a kind of repository for the work of a very famous stained glass artist and studio that's really not that accessible in England anymore.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. Let's see. Mel Horowitz says he wishes there had been more time for Bereth Shalom, and that Rabbi Gordon was also available to speak. Is Rabbi Gordon with us?
I am. I joined late.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Tell us a bit more.
Delighted. So you talked about the story of the Ark. I don't remember, did you talk about how the Ark is built around the original Ark?
No, we said that the Torahs were within the original Ark, I think, but yes.
So the Ark is very unusual because in the place where you would expect it to say something like, know before whom you stand or holy to God, it says in very fancy lettering.
You just froze.
Read.
Everybody
in
froze,
memory
or did I
of
freeze?
Emmanuel B. Mount.
Hmm.
And his initials are on the side. And if you go up to the cemetery, that young man's grave has a carving of an empty boat. He was about 19 and drowned in a boating accident on the Hudson. So it's really, some people say that the Ark is sort of the shape of a boat. I have seen others from around that time. It was toward the end of the 19th century that in similar shapes. But if you stand up and come up to it and open the curtains, you can see the original Ark, which was, maybe 4 feet high by 4 feet wide or something like that. And the new one was built around it, as you could see, so high that it covered up the bottom 4 panels of the stained glass rose window above it.
Wow. Well, thank you. We're delighted you've joined us, and thank you for that. There's a question: does the Tiffany interior of the Troy Episcopal Church date to the building's construction? I think it does, but
No, it
no,
does
it
not.
doesn't. Ah,
The original construction is from 1827, and the interior was very, very plain. It looked like one of those Presbyterian churches down in the Hudson Valley. White pews, very plain. Actually, I can show you a lot. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. I could show you what it looks like. What happened is that the roof, the weight of the roof rested entirely on the outside walls, and it's a pretty wide building. So in the 1890s, when Troy is at its height and a very wealthy community at this point, we were either going to have to knock the thing down or do something. So they decided to renovate, and after they gutted the interior to raise the roof, make it much steeper, we got Tiffany to do the interior. So the interior is from the 1890s rather than the original.
well, it was a wise choice. Thank you.
I'm just so thankful. Yes, and we've never had enough money to modernize like the 60s, or the drop ceilings of the 70s, something like that. We never had enough money to do that, so we're still here.
I think years ago there was a church in the Hudson Valley with Tiffany decoration all over the walls, and I don't think we could stop them from painting it white just because it seemed more modern. But so
Right.
we're glad you did. I'm trying to see if let's see. Oh, well, Margaret wants us to know that Blessed Trinity's skylight has more than 200,000 pieces of glass set in a ½ mile of lead strips. That's a lot. Ann Friedman, who is the director of our Sacred Sites program, wants to know if your doors are open, do you provide tour materials? Do you tell the history of your institution? And if your doors are not always open, how do you let folks know about tours? And do you share your history with your members? Who would like to answer that or start to answer that?
But I think Dean Harding had something to say about that, but.
I put up in the chat that we're
I
open.
can't believe
most-
you're all speechless.
I'm not muted. I don't think people can hear me. Hear me? We're open most days. We have a mass every day. Daily services is part of the original vision of the cathedral. So we accept a little bit prevented by COVID, but even through COVID, we have a daily Eucharist every day at 12:05, and we open up at about 11:30 and stay open till about 1 o'clock. And we do get tourists all the time. Sadly, they're mostly from Japan and Germany and places like that, and not from the United States. We do have booklets that are available, guides that are available. We ask for a small donation for that. And anybody that's interested in a more comprehensive tour, we have a 3D virtual tour on our website that's based on laser mapping of the cathedral. That is, it's quite a remarkable experience. Is very much like being in the building, and you can navigate around and go where you want, and there are little things that'll pop up and tell you things about various locations in the cathedral. So we
Norman,
do try very hard to tell the congregation about the history of the cathedral and communicate that as a kind of a regular feature of our communications.
Right. Norman Rice gave me a wonderful tour years ago. He's a great fan of the cathedral.
Right. Yeah.
Was your
I
question?
can also,
Yes.
I can
Well,
speak
you-
to that. Of course, we always give the history because it's just so fascinating here with the Tiffany and how it came about, which leads into the history of Troy, and we can go all over the place. A lot of our history is on our website, stpaulschurch.org, I think. I've forgotten. St. Paul's Church in Troy, I got that. And we also have a Facebook page. So we try to, as much as possible, show pictures and tell our story.
Mm-hmm. And the Scahary Church, I imagine that's a lot of history to tell. Do you make a point of telling that to everyone and letting the community know?
Actually, that's an area that needs some help, and but we do have a congregation member did a deep dive into our history back 15 years ago, and wrote a quite a comprehensive booklet on the history of the church. All aspects of the church, not just the sanctuary, or not just the buildings, but unfortunately, there wasn't much information available on our windows, which is what we got. We're getting a grant from you folks on. We don't know who designed the windows. We don't know who built the windows. And that's an unfortunate thing. I just made a note. Since I've been in charge of building and grounds, I've learned a lot of interesting things. If there are any bell enthusiasts out there in this group, we have a 37-inch Meneely bell from the Meneely Bell Foundry in West Troy. You're welcome to come see it at any time. We had to take it down in the course of our renovations and rebuild the belfry, which was rotten and leaking all over our organ, and put it back up. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And I think Rabbi Gordon had something to say about this as well.
Okay.
I do. I think actually we don't do nearly a good enough job of being open and promoting ourselves, because we really, as you saw, it's kind of a jewel, and Troy is coming back. But for a while, it was a jewel. We used to call it the jewel in the pupik of the Capital District, meaning the belly button. So we have, for our 150th, we did, which was 5 years ago, we did, well, let me say, the 150th of the congregation, because the 150th of the building is 4 years later. That was last year. So we did quite a bit of research, and we put together 5 panels that can be put on an easel with photographs and text that tell some of the history of the congregation and the building. I think actually we're inspired to put together some tour materials, because we actually have a great deal. We have the original fundraising pledge, the original, what do you call it, building fund record, the plea and the names of the committee and how much they donated, and then about 6 pages of donations. And then many of you will understand this. Last page, you've got the building committee with some more big donations, probably filling in what was needed at the end.
Wow. Good. Well, we hope those of you who don't have a history you're sharing will now. I was just wondering, in the time we have left, COVID changed a lot. Are many of you open? Are you doing in-person services again? Anybody?
Answer that?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. we have started having in-person services. We require masking. They occur at 10 o'clock on Sundays. And I think for the foreseeable future, that will continue. It depends on what the course of COVID and its variations are. People are always welcome to visit the church. Our pastor's name is Stephanie Graham Walker. And I'm sure we make an arrangement to tour people if they'd like. And there's a great deal of history associated with the church. And we'll be celebrating our 200th in 2026. So I'm sure there'll be some materials that will be prepared for that.
That's
And there's
terrific.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, of course. And I'm sure many of you have gone virtual yourselves, providing virtual services to the congregation. How has that worked out for you? Anybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is Beth Hirschhorn. It's worked out very well for us, as a matter of fact. We've always been a destination congregation where people come from all over the place, not only from Troy or the capital region, but we've gotten people participating from other states and other places who have just gotten connected to us for one way or another. But we're contemplating trying to open for some masked and limited availability, high holiday services, but we're paying close attention to what's going on, and we're going to make some decisions as we get a little bit closer. So we're not sure. It might just be the rabbi and our choir.
Yep.
And always virtual. From now on, we'll be virtual as well, as the rabbi says, multi-access, in person and virtual.
Anyone else?
St. Paul's opened, we opened as soon as we could. We've got this really large church that will seat 400, but we don't get 400 people anymore, and more like 30 since COVID. So we've roped off every other pew. We were able to and the ceiling is, 60 feet up there. So, with fans and opening windows as much as possible, we've been having services every Sunday since for a year, over a year now.
Okay. And Margaret?
As well as virtual.
I'm sorry.
Our situation is similar to hers. We have a very large building and a very small congregation. We started in-person services in June of 2020 with pews roped off and people wearing masks and hand sanitizer, and of course, no communion from the cup, and that still hasn't resumed. And then we relaxed things just recently a little bit so that people could take their masks off when they got in the pew. But now who knows, we maybe have to go back to everybody keeping their masks off. When they walk around church, they have to put their mask on. But it's worked out so fine. We're not aware of anybody becoming contaminated with COVID in our building. So we're very pleased about that. We also not right away, but we did start online live streaming services. We got a new priest assigned to us in the fall of 2020, and he was all for it, whereas the prior person was not. And so we have live stream services, and it's been amazing. The reaction to them and the number of people later on on Facebook, they comment. It's amazing to see where they're from, and it's been just very eye-opening to say the least. So we're still continuing them, but of course encouraging people to come in the flesh.
Great. And Leanne? Sure.
Well, we've done all kinds of things. As soon as the shutdown happened, we went to a very peculiar combination of virtual. The pastor would tape her sermon, and the musicians would tape their performances, and the congregation would get several links to YouTube to watch. So it was pretty clunky. And then we were able to stream on Facebook. And even though we've been back to in person for some time, we're still live streaming. And I'm asking myself, you know, whether that might go on for a long time, because we have, of course, many senior members of the congregation who are not likely to want to come out. And we started with pews roped off and everyone masked, then the ropes went away, everyone was masked, then we didn't have to be masked, now we're back to being masked again. So like everything with COVID, it just seems like it has to be flexible all the time.
Right. Well, I'm sure most of you are doing your community programs as best as well. And since this is about architecture, we do have another question for the dean. If you could, do you have any plans to finish the cathedral, or what would you do, you know, along those lines if you had the chance? Dean?
Well, but we certainly plan to finish the cathedral. We're only 150 years into this thing, and it takes 400 or 500 years to build a cathedral. So we're just about on schedule, I think. Actually, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule even. The things that are missing are the lantern at the crossing and the two immense towers at the entrance. And I think you will have seen that the entrance that we have is a sort of functional entrance that was put up and what we needed, but it isn't really in keeping with the architecture of the building. So replacing that entrance and putting up the towers, that would be great. But the first thing I'd love to see would be the lantern, which would really create quite dramatic lighting within the interior of the cathedral. So we just need for some Silicon Valley zillionaire to find Jesus, and we're there.
You know, I had a question that occurred to me as we were doing this too. Since the cathedral once had all those other buildings, and now you're surrounded by the Department of Education and other things, how did that happen? Did they buy the land from you?
Oh, well, that's a long story. There was actually the cathedral, we have a tagline, "Come discover Albany's hidden cathedral." Because you can stand on the corner out there and not know that the 5th largest Gothic church in North America is a block away, because you can't see it because it's hidden by these immense state buildings. And there was a feud between Bishop Doane and the Commissioner of Education, and the Commissioner of Education won. He bought up all the options for the land between the cathedral and the Capitol Square. Where the Capitol building is in Albany. He bought up those options when the bishop was on a trip, and when he came back, he was presented with that sort of fait accompli. The building is only supposed to be 3 stories high, and it's only 3 stories high, but each story is about 30 feet. So that's the story of its own. And then over the years, you know, the Order of Anglican Sisters wasn't able to maintain itself, and therefore there wasn't the staffing for the school and for the first pediatric hospital in Albany, and so that the state offered good money for that land. That was ultimately it was bought, but we still occupy, you know, I would say almost 3 city blocks. It's a kind of a long, narrow piece, but it's a considerable piece of real estate that we yet operate. It's enough for us to say grace over.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for a really fascinating hour and a terrific trip across the state. We hope to see you in person. We hope we're back doing in-person Sacred Sites Open House tours next year, but maybe we'll continue some virtual things too, because again, it allows us all to see so many things in a visit that we couldn't do in person. And you met Colleen. Is Anne here with us? Anne, where are you?
I'm here. She's here.
There we go. Colleen and Anne are our Sacred Sites team, and you've probably met one or the other of them, or you will see them soon. So they're the heroes, and we thank them for all their work. and all these buildings too. Thank you all for joining us. It was a great pleasure to meet so many of you, and we'll see you on another tour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.